Oh, you were going to send me.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Alan.
Hi,
How are you doing?
doing well.
Alan, how you doing?
So you guys, let me just,
Oh, excuse me.
ooh, bless you.
Thank you. It caught me.
Let me know when you guys have Alan set up.
Who, me?
Hey, LaShawn.
Yeah,
Hey, LaShawn. Can you close your door,
no,
please, just so you won't hear me and I won't hear you? Thank you.
of course. Of course, yeah. How's that? No problem.
How about now? Okay. All right. So let me know, Rashad. Hello and welcome to the Special Report. I'm your host, Areva Martin, and this is the show where we tackle the critical issues impacting our communities, providing you with much needed trusted information and resources. That is news that you can use. Well, we also separate fact from fiction, and we give it to you what some would say is straight, no chaser. And today is no different. There is so much going on. We were planning to talk about those boycotts of stores that have rolled back DEI today. And then this bombshell letter from the Defense Intelligence Agency started making its way around the internet. And we all had to pause. We had to take a deep breath. We had to read it once. We had to read it twice. We had to check it to make sure what our eyes were seeing was actually what is contained in this letter. And as the saying goes, our eyes did not fool us and are not failing us. Indeed, the Defense Intelligence Agency has sent out a letter to its entire staff. That is, its staff that works for the federal government, advising them that there is a pause on all activities related to what the agency deems special emphasis programs, special emphasis programs, and special observations. We're going to dig into what are these special emphasis programs and special observations, celebrations that we have been acknowledging in this country for decades. What does this letter mean? Who has to follow the direction of this letter? And where do we go from here? We have a packed show from you. We have some of the best experts in the country that are going to weigh in on this topic. All of that coming up right here on the Special Report.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
Letter. We got to start with this letter. So if we can put that letter up, Rashad, this is the letter that is making its way around the internet. You may have already gotten it in your inbox. If you haven't, you probably will before the night is over. I'm just going to read a little of it. It's dated January 28th, 2025. That was on yesterday. It's addressed to the DIA workforce, presumably that is the Defense Intelligence Agency workforce. And the subject line is pause on special emphasis programs and related activities and events. It goes on to say, number one, the agency is working internally and with the department to implement the executive orders ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing and initial recessions of harmful executive orders and actions dated January 20th. And that's a long way of saying that this letter is in response to this January 20th executive order signed by the president. That is President Trump. It goes on to say, we are receiving questions across the workforce on the way we move forward with special emphasis programs, special observations, agency resource groups, affinity groups, and employee networking groups. So the letter goes on to say, we are, DIA, that is going to pause. That means stop all activities and events related to agency special emphasis programs effective immediately. That would have been yesterday, January 28th, and until further notice. It goes on to say, additionally, special observances hosted throughout the year by the command element, directorates and special offices are also paused. And then they give us a list of these observances and special emphasis programs that are being paused. Well, in January, it's Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Now, there's an asterisk by it, and I'll tell you what that asterisk means. In February, it's Black History Month. In March, it's Women's History Month. In May, it's Holocaust Day, Days of Remembrance. In June, it's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Pride, also Pride. Also in June is Juneteenth, again with an asterisk. We'll talk about that. August is Women's Equality Day. September through October is National Hispanic Heritage Month. October is also National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And November is National American Indian Heritage Month. Now, the asterisk means that the pause will not affect the federal holidays. And of that list, the only two federal holidays are MLK Jr.'s birthday, which we just observed, and Juneteenth, which is, thanks to Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, is a federal and a national holiday. Here to help me make sense, if it is even possible to make sense of all of this, again, some of the leading thought leaders in this country, Dr. Omikanga Dibinga, he's an author and professor of intercultural communications at American University. Yvonne Jackson, she's a former DEI operations expert, and she was in charge of what's called Black at Apple Talent Lead. And also joining us is Alan Orr. He is the founder of Orr Immigration. Whew. Thank you. Welcome to all of you. There is so much to unpack in this letter from the Defense Intelligence Agency. I would start with you, Dr. Dibinga. Trump has been flooding the zone. And I'm not a big sports person, but it doesn't take a whole lot of sports knowledge to understand that. Basically, for the last 8-9 days, he has been just signing executive order after executive order, retracting some of the executive orders that he actually signs, creating incredible chaos amongst federal government departments and workers. And yesterday, this bombshell from the Defense Intelligence Agency that's trying to make sense of his executive orders is saying, y'all, we're not observing Black History Month, which is coming up in a couple of days, Women's History Month, or any of these other days that we have observed in this country for decades. Let me just start by asking this question, Dr. Dibinga. Where is the planned revolution? I'll use that term, but, response to this onslaught and these attacks by Donald Trump?
Well, that's the question I'm asking. But to be quite honest, I'm optimistic that there's going to be some real pushback. And the reason why I'm optimistic is because when I think about the letters that went out canceling all different types of federal aid, there was a multicultural backlash to that. And the fact so many people in this country, when we all know when they talk about DEI and anti-DEI programs, we know they mean anti-Black. And many people across the country have felt the same way who are not involved in this type of work. So they never really pushed to protect things relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But with this letter, the fact that they put everything on the letter, not just Black History Month and Juneteenth and MLK Day, but Holocaust Remembrance Day, Hispanic Heritage Month, like everybody, they literally with this letter told everybody, we're not interested in you. And I feel like that's going to lead to a bigger backlash, similar to what we saw also with the Pentagon reversing its ideas about not teaching about the Tuskegee Airmen and the WASP, the women soldiers as well. There was backlash, there was uproar. So when people stand up and they're united, this administration backs down, and this just happened. So I'm expecting a similar backlash. I'd be very surprised if there wasn't, but we can't continue to expect this from Trump. But I have a feeling that this one is going to backfire too.
So Yvonne, Dr. Benga says when a lot of people hear DEI, they think about Black folks,
Yes.
but you've worked inside corporations, or at least Apple, and you've had to administer DEI programs. And we know
Yes.
DEI is not just about Black folks. So help folks who may be laboring under that misconception understand better, what is DEI and who does it encompass?
Yes, I had to learn this the hard way. I started on my journey working, as you mentioned, as a Black at Apple lead for talent management. So I was focused on the Black community within Apple. Then I shifted from a technology role to actually doing DEI, and I realized, wait a minute, it's bigger than just that community. And I had to shift all the ways I looked at DEI because of that shift. And what people don't always realize is that DEI is right now, it's just a few words thrown together that's made it into this whole concept. And instead of looking at what each word means, diversity. And when I say diversity, it's about celebrating diversity. Diversity is beautiful, right? Equity is what was built on, supposedly, the idea that we all have the potential to live up to what we can, or have the potential to live up to what we could ever get, what that American dream, supposedly, right? And then there is inclusion. It's human need to feel included, right? It's about humanity. How we were built, how we was designed was to feel belonging. When you take that out of the equation, you take a piece of what makes us people, what makes us humans, right? And then when we look at the whole tier, it's everyone's affected. It's anyone who's different than who's considered the majority. When I say the majority, it means those in power, because the majority actually isn't a number. It isn't the majority of the people who exist, but it's the majority of people with the majority of power. Those are the ones that are holding this over our heads, that DEI is for us. And what I just saw, someone just sent me a video, and it said on the list of all the nationalities of people who get rewards and grants, Black people are actually at the bottom of that list.
Mm.
The first group, when you're looking at from ethnicities, I believe is Hispanic Latino. From there, it's Asian. From there, I believe it's actually those with disabilities. And then after that, it's African Americans, Black Americans. So the storyline that DEI is for us is false. It's not even true.
So we know, Alan, that this administration is not only hostile to people of color, Black people, Asians, Latinos, it's also very hostile to LGBTQ, those individuals who are members of that community, and it can be hostile to women in a lot of instances. So DEI also encompasses LGBTQ folks. What do you make of this letter? And what Yvonne said is, yeah, it's not just Black folks, and we're at the bottom of that list. She said that she received. There are other groups that are, ahead of Black folks when you look at the benefits that may be received from any kind of DEI program.
So I think there's a little bit of confusion about the purpose of the letter, the purpose of the executive order in nature, because it isn't about exactly the language of the letter. It's about messaging. And the messaging is that you're a special group, that you're different, that these things have been carved out for you over time. And now we're going to sort of deal with equity by getting rid of all of them on a piece of paper. The challenge is what is wanted in this circumstance. And the reason for that is something that you probably know well when you worked in big law. They don't have to tell you they don't want you. without telling you they don't want you. So what these methods do is inform government workers and people who will work for the government, or people who are on the edge of retirement, which is a large Black employer, and other safety groups, people with disabilities, also a large government whole, to say, you're not protected here, you're not wanted here. Here's a signal to you to take the door, because if you want to get rid of somebody, you don't have to say whatever. You can do reviews, you can get rid of things. But I don't think he knows he's not going to, or they know under Pete Sajak that they might not win on these things in the long run. They're going to argue budgetary issues. They're going to argue everybody got eliminated. And they're going to say, well, there's no white man day on there, no man day on the list. If you sort of think about those categories, that's why they sort of laid it out that way. That's specifically why they laid it out that way month to month. And it goes in tangent with take this buyout and leave the government. So what they're doing now is purging the government to say there's a certain type of person that we want to work here. And here's the mentality that we want for this government, because it takes a long time to get in the government. And believe it or not, and I still believe it, that if the Democrats were to take control, they would not do the same things that the Republicans have done here. They would not do the purge. They would let people be in space and keep working there. So that's the problem.
So I'm glad you brought up the Democrats, because Dr. Dominga, I'm getting so many DMs, text messages coming so fast and furiously, I can barely keep up with them. And one of the big questions in a lot of these text messages and DMs is, where are the Democrats? Where's the Democratic leadership? I heard you say, and I took to heart what you said earlier about pushback on not teaching about the Tuskegee Airmen to those that are part of our military, and other ways that we've seen pushback. But there seems to be this void in terms of Democratic leadership. You're in DC. You're at the epicenter, so you're right there where all of this is happening at the in the DMV. Where are the Democrats? A lot of folks are asking that question.
Well, to be clear, my first answer, I didn't say pushback from Democrats, right? So, it was pushback from lots of other people, right? And
I stand corrected, Dr. Domingo. You're right. You did not say pushback from Democrats.
Because I'm with you, because really, quite honestly, Trump is throwing so much stuff at them that I believe that the Democrats were just about to have a press conference like yesterday or today or sometime this week about the insurrectionist pardons, right? And look where we are.
Oh, wait a minute. They're still on the pardons?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he throws so much at them, they're so slow that they can't keep up. So by the time they finally get to this, he's going to be on something else. And this is we can guarantee that the AOCs, the Ayanna Presleys, they are going to be all over this, right? The Jasmine Crockett's, but the Democrats, in my opinion, are not doing a good job of elevating those voices. Several of them lost out, their committee attempts to lead those spaces and the like. So as Democrats are trying to regroup, Trump is giving them opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to speak up and stand out. Some of these Democrats are even voting for Trump's nominees, like Kristi Noem. So it's just like, I don't really understand what they're doing, but they do not have a strong control of the news cycle, and they also don't have a rapid media response team to be able to handle the Foxes and the OANNs and all of those, and plus the White House press secretary and press office as well. The Democrats need to speed up their own process, otherwise they're going to be looked at as irrelevant, as many of us look at them as being irrelevant right now.
Yeah, we definitely are all, I think, shaking our heads, scratching our heads, trying to figure out, who is going to emerge as a leader of the party. And we know the Democratic Party is very hierarchical. You mentioned some of those younger Congress women. The leader of the Democratic Party now is Hakeem Jeffries, good friend. I love him, but I got to get his brother on here. He often comes on my show to ask him, where is the leadership coming from the minority leader's office? Some of the women may feel constrained, as you talked about Presley or AOC or Jasmine Crockett, because there's such a hierarchical structure. But Alan raised a really good point, Yvonne, and he says, look, this letter isn't really about ending those observances as much as it is about Oh man. There's something that's happening. Should it be or should not be? Do you want us to go out and come back or what? I'm on it. Are they back? No problem. So we're good. Oh, of course I do. I'm good. You ready? So Yvonne, Alan raised a really good point. He said, look, this letter is not about ending these days of observances. It's really more about sending a chilling effect and sending a message to the staff at this particular agency and agencies throughout the federal government that they are no longer wanted. This is all a part, according to Alan, of the plan that Trump has to get rid of 2 million federal workers. Now, you've worked inside a large corporation. If this letter dropped on a day when you were still working as a DEI expert inside one of those corporations, how would you advise your company in terms of responding to this letter or doing anything? Because we know there are going to be some companies that get this letter, even though it's not addressed to them, even though it has nothing to do with their business, are going to use it perhaps to get rid of some events or special programs that they want to rid their culture of.
Through the business sector as well, right? They want people who have not joined them on this sad parade to join them now. But what I will say is, let's not send that narrative out that all companies are in alignment with what they're doing. Because I just had a client yesterday, their company's not. So many people that I'm talking about, they are leaning into DEI, but they're understanding that this lean in needs to look a little different. So what I would tell a company is to don't wait for the next election cycle. You need to take action right now. The first thing to do is look at your company's mission statement and see if it's aligned with the concept of equity. If you don't want to do DEI, it's okay. Don't look at the words. Don't look at the letters. Look at the word equity. Because when you start with equity, this is going to create the workplace and environment that leads to more diversity, which leads to more inclusion and belonging. So what I'm telling people to do is weave DEI through the entire business operations. You need to take it out of the HR silo. It no longer lives there. It is part of your daily practices, your processes, the way you communicate. It's just part of it's honestly the DNA, right? You weave it into the fabric of the business. Then you look at how you can strengthen it from a legal and policy protections. Talk to your lawyers. Don't sit around. Talk to people you have on staff. Have them review your contracts, the policies, the governance. See what you need to shore up so that you are protecting your teams, you're protecting your companies, right? Because guess what? The people inside of your company are scared. So you don't need to do this just for those externally for PR's sake. You need to be taking these steps so that those internally feel that they are safe, right? You have to do that. And then I think the next part of this is, again, increasing awareness of the leadership team of what's happening. You'd be surprised of who is not paying attention to the news. People have turned off their laptops, their apps, all of that. They're not seeing any feeds. No one knows what Project 2025 is. If your leadership is not in the know of what's happening outside, there will probably be a problem, because when something happens, they're not going to be able to react in a way that is going to, ensure, again, that their entire organization feels safe, and that those who are looking at that organization to give them money, right, give them to believe in them, actually believes they are committed to this cause.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People inside these corporations, inside organizations are scared. I'm getting calls from federal employees. I'm a civil rights lawyer. I do a lot of employment litigation. I've gotten calls from employees that work at the EEOC and work at other federal agencies saying, what do? We haven't been fired yet. But to Alan's point, a lot of these policies are directed at either firing us or forcing us out via this 8-month severance package that Trump yesterday was offering to federal employees. Alan, what is the end game here with this flood the zone strategy that Trump has? It's been 8 or 9 days and it's 200 plus executive orders. It's an unprecedented offer to federal employees to quit, to resign. I mean, this is like a new CEO coming into a private company to disrupt it, to turn it upside down, to force out staff, and to bring in their own team. Is that what we are witnessing? A federal government that's being run like a private corporation with the goals of purging it of civil servants and bringing on a bunch of Trump loyalists?
That is exactly what Project 2025 laid out. So I think it's pretty clear that that's what's actually happening in this activity. Part of what we need to do is to shift from Trump main character energy. We can't focus on what he's doing. He's released 352 executive orders. Who knows if he's even read them or understands them? So instead of focusing on what he's doing, let's focus on what we're doing, right? Because part of the problem is that we're asking people to celebrate us rather than celebrating ourselves. So the concept of whatever they're going to do have these days or not doesn't control what you do in your private life or outside of these companies, to sort of infuse your own power and understanding of what these holidays mean to your community and as far as your education. So take that back one. We're relying on someone else to do something that we probably do in a better case ourselves. outside of these different organizations. That's step one. Step two is to don't buy stuff, right? We are big consumers. Don't buy stuff from places that don't hire you or don't support your programs. Clear as that. Very simple choice. No, thank you, right? Things may be $5, $2 more. We have the internet. We have ways of finding Black companies and supporting Black businesses. We need to really learn something from our Black immigrant community about how long a dollar can actually stay in our community over time, rather than running somewhere else and saying, your ice is colder, I want to spend money with you. Those are the external things. What companies will respond to, what we learned most from Pride and then we got from Black history, is when the money stops coming in the door, there's going to be a shift in their parameters. I think Target made a huge mistake after building itself up as this big diversity land all the time, all this stuff going on, and to shift away from that so suddenly, because people were going to Target or Target because of their affinity. And now that they've lost that affinities, people are going to turn away and they're going to Costco. And we've seen the Costco shareholders say, we're not doing whatever you think we're doing, and they're getting ready for it. For me as a lawyer, forget DEI. Don't even use it anymore. The word now is belonging. We want everybody to belong in our company, period. Sue me on that. Find some way to sort of say that you don't want belonging and some way to sort of make that empowerful. So the very concept of holding on to those old terms doesn't work that. And then we need to use it against them. We need to find the statistics and say, I mean, the entire cabinet, if ever there were DEI hires, the entire cabinet are all DEI hires. They don't have the education, they don't have the experience, they don't have the qualifications. Lay that out on paper against the ones that had preceded them in those positions and the ones that currently hold them. It's time to shift the narrative. And that's what the Democrats have lost. They have lost the narrative because they don't have main character energy. Everything is focused around Trump. So this sort of concept of making him the world of every sentence, Trump, verb, whatever, forget that. It needs to be my constituents, verb, then whatever.
I'm loving this term, Alan, main character energy. I love it. I don't think I've heard that before, but when I start dropping that on social media, I got it from you. Thank you for that. Main character energy. I like that. All right, Dr. Domingo, Alan says we need to give up DEI, give up the word woke. I was at a service last night with the very, very gifted and talented Pastor Freddie Haynes out of Dallas, and he gave us the history of the word woke and when the word woke was first used. And I mean, it was long before even the civil rights movement. And a lot of folks feel like these are our terms. They're being bastardized by the far right, and we shouldn't relinquish words that have become a part of our culture. Where are you on that? You are a linguistic expert. You're a rapper. You're a spoken word expert. Where are you in terms of the use of these words? Do you agree with Alan or disagree?
Well, I think that we don't have to, for me, it's not about us giving up the words. It's about not using the words as they define them. Right? And it's like politics rule number one. Whenever you're using the language of your opponent, you're losing, even if you have the best arguments ever. So I'm not going to argue with like a Republican strategist or any of these anti-DEI folks about the importance of having woke policies, because when I say that term, they've turned it into a trigger word. So if I use the term woke, I'm saving that for conversations with my community. But when I'm talking to them, I'm talking about what Alan says. What are your policies as it relates to belonging? And as our sister was saying, as Yvonne was saying as well, as about equity. Like, even if we're not saying DEI, talking about breaking down each word. Dr. King said that integration is about the sharing of power, resources, and responsibility. So what does the power and resources and responsibility look like in your schools, right? In your companies? I'm not going to argue with somebody about, let's talk about CRT and the policy, because we all know that CRT is not being taught in K-12 schools. So I'm going to keep our language to our communities. I'm not going to argue with our language in their ways of using it. We are all smart enough, we are all knowledgeable enough, skilled enough to be able to speak with these people with the proper terms and not use the language in the way that they co-opted it. And that's how what Alan said makes perfect sense. What Yvonne says makes perfect sense, because we have a bigger language than they do. All they have is trigger words, and we got to go beyond that.
So when you talk about those trigger words, Yvonne, we know that, the biggest HR, Human Resources Association in the country earlier last year, or some months ago last year, changed, said they were no longer going to use, was it the E or was it the D in DEI?
It was the E. It was the equity.
It was the E in DEI, because they said that word was triggering. They said it was divisive. They said people didn't understand the word equity. Again, I'm gonna put you back in that corporation, advising that company. Do you agree that a part of this is just dropping a word like equity or even the whole term, and that solves everything? Because I hear what you're saying, Dr. DeBing and Alan, about the word belonging, but these folks will take the word belonging and bastardize it, and it'll no longer be a safe word.
That's right.
So I've always thought of DEI not as an actual word that I actually do. The work that I do is not DEI. DEI was designed by corporations, right? It was designed because at some point, companies began to be less homogenized and more diverse. And leaders realized, what are we going to do with these diverse teams that cannot work together, who have never experienced, right, diversity? So DEI came in here as a tool in order to manage that. But what it isn't is a strategy or a long-term strategy, right? It's kind of like a Band-Aid, and that's why they string the words together. But when you look at equity, what you're looking at is the experiences of each person. What I tell clients is I'm not coming in here to take power from anyone. What I'm coming in is to make sure the experience of the woman over here, someone with a disability over there, someone who identifies as queer over here has the same experience at work as maybe a white male in that same job or in that same team. It's not taken away, it's giving people the same opportunity to reach their potential and thrive. And what is wrong with that, right? And so, yes, to that point, I totally disagree with
But let me push back a little on that, Yvonne. You say, what is wrong with that? Trump and MAGA supporters say when you do that, you are by definition discriminating against white men. And so much of this conversation, the elephant in the middle of the room is that this is white male grievance culture rearing its ugly head, and white men saying, we're over here, we control 89, 90% of the world, and we ought to be controlling 100% of it. And we are going to stop at nothing until we control 100% of it, because that is what is happening with the use of DI, the use of woke. It's all about white men, white supremacists, narrative and culture saying white people feel like they are losing their grip. They feel like they're losing their power. And Alan, when an organization or a group of people feel like they're losing their power, there's nothing they won't do to try to hold on to it.
So, okay.
No, I totally agree. And that's why I also have companies look at the numbers. What is the actual percentage of the people in your organization? There's companies out there that it's actually 50% of women, male, or even there's more women than men in those roles. So yes, it's fear driving. But when those people who even are in the majority are not heard, they're also going to push back. All civil rights, all big changes in history were people at the grassroots levels who got pushed too far and they couldn't take it anymore. And right now, what we see in that push is for women, right? On that list that we saw, there were 2 holidays for women on that list, right? Women can no longer say they're not part of this conversation. It's no longer affecting them. So I do believe that we're going to see much more pushback towards, wait a minute, I'm here too, because of that gender gap has definitely shifted more than what people actually realize.
But address that issue of fear, Alan, because we know so much of this is being driven by people's perception, even if it's wrong. I mean, even if their perception is wrong, a lot of people, their perception is their reality.
So I think there are a couple of things to think about. The zero-sum game framing is the problem, right? This concept, this is a versus world, and there's a limit of jobs when there's not. There's no such thing. The jobs that I had or the 80s are not the same jobs that exist today. And this limit of power, you don't love your kids in a limited way. This one gets 30%, that one gets 45%. That is a very Western way of thinking about this sort of, the only way I can have something is if you lose something. And it's difficult to deal with people when you put in that versus world. That's number one, to change the concept. Number two is the reason why diversity has been so important is because in the room, we change the dynamics of how the business operates and it generally goes better, right? That those change agents are generally people from these communities. So remove that from the room and let them fail. You've seen a ton of businesses that lack diversity fail, right? So have that, right? Let's go build our Greenwoods, our Tulsas, and don't don't want the approval from people who don't want you in the room, right? That's the one thing I did learn from Big Law. No matter how good I am, no matter how many cases I win, no matter what I write, there's still another level I need to jump through to prove to them that I have value. We have to assess our value not by what they say we are, but by what we are. And in some cases, while we know we'll need to work in these spaces, part of it needs to be the plan to say, well, I'm going to get out of this space and I'm going to start my own. And that great concept that you have, don't bring it to them. Don't bring them the beat, the recipe, the seasoning, the sound.
Let me stop you right there, though, Alan, because I'm an entrepreneur, been one pretty much my entire adult life, but everybody's not going to be an entrepreneur. We know that most folks, the majority of people are going to work for someone, whether it's a private corporation, a nonprofit, or a governmental entity. And so we have to address that reality for those people. You mentioned don't take the spices, don't take your products to those, majority white organizations or companies. And that brings me to the boycott question that you raised, or the boycott issue, Alan. Dr. Dibinga, the boycott issue is as controversial as all of these issues. You have Black creatives, you have Black entrepreneurs saying the opposite of what Alan says. They're saying,
but I think the one thing I want to say before we should is they should work for you. But they're saying don't stop shopping at Target or Walmart, because if you do, you're proving them right, that we don't have buying power, that we can't create economic opportunities. And they're saying keep shopping. In fact, buy more, wipe the shelves of all of our products. And then, Dr. Dibinga, you have these creatives saying, well, you have civil rights leaders, Al Sharpton, for one, saying, no, we have to have an organized, old school 1960s Rosa Parks, don't ride the bus kind of boycott. Where are you on the boycott?
Well, the fact of the matter is, what matters to me right now is that we as a community we're having the discussion on what to do. Because for months I've been saying these things are coming. Where is the conversation about the boycotts? And I saw Reverend Sharpton say that we're going to meet and come up with a plan in 90 days. And clearly, I'm like, we don't have 90 days. So clearly he decided to,
You're not liking the Black folks time frame, Dr. Dibinga.
I'm just saying, give me 90 minutes. You know what I mean? So first of all, we have to have the discussion. That's the most important part. So we're not doing something blind. I think that also we have to be mindful of a question I have is it only Black people who are having these discussions? Because all of these other groups, DEI programs, as we've established, affect everybody. So our indigenous folks talking about this, Hispanic people, we bear the brunt for so many other groups. 1968, we fought that other immigrants could come in, removing the quota, and they come in here calling us the N-word. So it's like, we fight for 14th Amendment, help, gay marriage and the Chinese Exclusion Act. The things we fought for have benefited so many other people, but they don't come back and support us. The other part that I'm thinking about is, are any of these creators going to places like Target and say, if you don't want me, I don't want you, I'm pulling my own stuff from the shelf? Because part of me says that there's something wrong with the idea that a company can say that they don't want us and they profit from us more. Something is, and I'm not saying I'm not sure where to go, but that doesn't sound right. And so rather than these creators talking about it's going to affect us, these creators should be partnering with us, working together to make sure we can still support them outside of that space. And so I believe that we need to go where we're celebrated and not tolerated. But the most important thing right now is that we are having this discussion so we can figure out how to move as a community. And that's the most important thing for me to see right now.
And I want the record to reflect, we're not having it 90 days later. We got the letter yesterday. We're having it 24 hours later. Yeah, the Black creatives piece, my producers can tell you, really hit me wrong. I came in hot on that one because, first of all, so many of those creatives are in those stores because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because of the work that we did, all of us collectively fighting and marching and protesting and filing lawsuits and winning lawsuits so that companies would end discrimination, not just in hiring and employment practices, but also in their purchasing practices. So put some respect on the work that civil rights leaders did to get you in these stores. And amen, Dibinga, for going to these stores saying, look, if you're rolling back DEI, you are essentially hurting a community that I am a part of. And I'm not okay with that. Look at the power these creatives and these entrepreneurs would have if they stepped up and said, it's not okay to roll back these policies and send a message to Black people, brown people, disabled people that they're not welcome in your corporations. Because how can, as you said, how can I sell my products here and the very people that buy them, because ain't nobody buying no Black gel cream, a straight iron, flat iron in your hair cream, except Black folks. And let's be real, come on, it's Black women buying a lot of these products. So where is the solidarity with us? And I do want to, before we wrap up, talk about, Dr. Domingo, your point about where are other folks? Why are we left to save everybody? 92% of Black women voted for Kamala Harris. We're doing our part. Imagine how powerful, Alan, a boycott would be if it wasn't just Black folks not shopping at Target, if Latinos said they're not shopping at Target, if people with disabilities, if white women said they weren't going to shop at Target, we could shut Target down. We could bring it to its knees. So is that conversation happening? The coalition?
I think it is. I think it's happening. But I think the difference is when you talk about those groups, they have alternative spaces to sell their goods. We're selling those goods in Target. There isn't the Black hair store anymore. Most of the Black brands have been bought by other companies that don't sort of relinquish or care about those brands. So this whole Black ownership that we had before, where we wouldn't be having these conversations if we owned BET, if we still owned the Black magazine, if there was still, I think Bonner Brothers is still owned by the Bonner family. I'm not sure, but don't hold me to that. If you still own the line of products of what you're selling. So part of the issue is we sold our land to someone, and now they're charging us to get back on it. And so we know that it's fickle. So going forward, we need to make sure that that space doesn't exist anymore. So I do think there's solidarity. But if you go to any neighborhood, Mexican neighborhood, Chinese neighborhood today on the Lunar New Year, or Japanese neighborhood, there's going to be a Japanese store with Japanese products owned by Japanese people with Japanese people working in there. You rarely see that in African-American communities outside of small mom and pop restaurants, 1 and 2 employees, 4 to 5 employees outside the restaurant. The commercial goods, the manufacturing goods, we don't see that anymore. And that's something that we lost that we need to reclaim, and that will take some time. So while we think about rebuilding that, or people like you rebuild that as an owner to work for other Black people, the concept for Black Americans can no longer be go to school and work for someone else. That's the problem that we have, because as soon as you work for someone else, they can pull it away from you.
Let me have you weigh in, Yvonne, on the boycotts. And more specifically, I want to ask you about what you saw inside, again, a big corporation. When you had issues that would arise that say maybe they were going to stop promoting or stop offering training on anti-racism or anti-bias type policies, did you see those affinity groups inside corporations, the Black group, the white women group, the LGBTQ group, the Latinos? Did you see them coming together in a coalition and going to upper management saying these are our collective demands? Did that happen?
I would have to say, in a way, yes. So when I worked, again, when I was in the Black at Apple ERG, what we did is, of course, we came up with some really new, innovative ways, right? We were focused more on internal movement. How do we move talent already there up? Because how can you bring in new people into a company that already has things going on? So how do we do internal movement? And so that's why I was focused on my part on talent. So once we create these new ways of managing these discussions, getting people internally movement, we started partnering with our Pride group. We started partnering with the Hispanic Latino group. We started partnering with all these people so we could start leveraging our collective knowledge, right? Our processes, our procedures. I come from a project management background. It's processes, procedures, it's practices, right? It's creating an SOP that you can hand off to others that they can also do it as well. So there is a precedent inside companies for doing that. And we have to realize the people inside of these large corporations are just us. They're not some special humans because they were able to get hired at Target or Apple or Amazon. It's just they were able to navigate the interview process and get in there. They also are scared. They also get angry. You know, they also are having this very conversation we're having right now. Trust me, they're having groups inside of the hall because, everyone went back to the office.
Right.
They're having these conversations and it is flowing across the line. So I want to say to people, yes, because if you're having it with your friends and family, you have friends and family inside those walls and they're having those conversations too.
Well, I want to see more, and I'm going to be on my social media feed after this show and for the next 24, 48 hours, looking to see if any of those influencers in some of those other affinity groups that we've identified are talking about locking arms with African Americans. So this isn't just, the heavy lift or the burden on Black people to be out front on this. And if any of you, please, DM me if you see any of those groups talking about coming together and boycotting, whether it's Target or Walmart or any of these big stores. I just feel like in this moment, that would be the most powerful message that we could send to any of those corporations. The spending power of Blacks, Latinos, white women, Asians, people with disabilities has to be enormous. I mean, it has to just be enormous. We're going to continue to track this story. We're going to continue to see if other agencies issue letters like this Defense Intelligence Agency. We're going to see if Trump, as you predict, Dr. Dominga, maybe retracts more of these 300 plus executive orders that he has signed. It has been a whirlwind for the last 8 days, y'all. And it ain't 8 months.
Yeah, right.
It's been 8 days, and we are already trying to play catch up. And to your point, Dr. Dominga, we're going to pray for, we're going to nudge, we're going to advocate, and we're going to hope that our Democratic leadership gets it together, because you're right. If they're still talking about the insurrectionists and we're talking about the dismantling of Black History Month at the federal level, we got a huge problem and a huge disconnect. I have a lot of faith in our leadership. We voted for these people. We know a lot of them personally. We know they're competent. We know they're capable. It's just a matter of them, feeling the urgency of now. The urgency of now. But I can't thank you enough, Dr. Dominga, Yvonne Jackson, Alan Orr. You guys have been phenomenal. And we will have you back as we continue to watch what is happening in Washington and how it impacts all of us right here on the Special Report. Peace.